Proteins are another one of our essential nutrients. As we talk here about proteins, we can see that proteins are nutrients that help build and maintain body tissues. Proteins are not just about muscle. There is a perception out there that proteins are only responsible for building and maintaining muscle, but as you can see here on the PowerPoint slide, they do help in the growth and development of muscle. They do help with bone, connective tissue such as ligaments and tendons and cartilage, teeth, skin, blood, and vital organs. So protein is essential for a variety of different reasons. Just like carbohydrates, proteins will supply 4 calories per gram. They're made of chains of amino acids. Your body can make all but 9 of those 20 amino acids. And the 9 that your body cannot make are called essential, meaning that they're essential because they must come from the foods that you choose to eat. So it's just really important that we start looking at proteins, that we understand that there is a significant function to them. We know that carbohydrates help with energy, and proteins will supply some energy, but more importantly, proteins, their main function is to build and to repair tissue. On this next slide, you see these are some illustrations or some visuals of some foods that are considered to be great sources of protein. We've got the nuts. We've got fish. Fish is an excellent source. We have poultry. We have meat. And once again, these are just some examples. If you notice, many of these foods on here would be considered animal products. So one thing we have to keep in mind is, although it's important that we get our protein, one of the other nutrients that we'll talk about here in a little bit is fat. Foods that come from animals also tend to be high in fats. So we also want to make sure that as we look at these foods and say, wow, these are excellent choices of protein, we also have to understand that some of these foods might also be high in fat. So we want to make sure that within each food, we're making the best possible choice that we can. One, to get the adequate amount of protein, but two, to make sure that we're not consuming too much fat as well. All right, complete proteins. As we talked about on a previous slide, that our body can make all of the amino acids except for 9. The 9 that our body cannot make are called essential. What a complete protein is any food that will contain all 9 of those essential amino acids. Animal products such as fish, meat, poultry, eggs, milk, cheese, yogurt, and many of our soybean products are also high in protein. So basically, if a food is coming from an animal source, it's complete in nature. Our next slide here now we'll now look at incomplete proteins. Incomplete proteins will lack some of those 9 amino acids. Legumes, nuts, whole grains, seeds. Basically, foods coming from an animal source are complete. Foods coming from a plant source would be incomplete. Now let's say you have this example of somebody who's a vegetarian. And some of you might be aware that the most extreme type of vegetarianism would be a vegan. A vegan eats nothing coming from an animal source. So the question is, can a vegan get all the protein they need on a given day? And the answer is yes. But that vegan would have to be educated, and they would have to know that where their protein is coming from, because what they would want to do is they would want to combine different types of incomplete proteins, kind of like a jigsaw puzzle. You take this piece plus this piece plus this piece, and you put them all together, and you have a completed puzzle. Same thing here. A vegan would take different pieces of incompletes or different sources of incomplete proteins, add those together, and that would be the equivalent of a complete protein. Now, what's the role or function of proteins? As we see in this slide, proteins are responsible for basic building material of all your cells. So once again, muscles, bones, skin, internal organs, hair, nails, etc. Protein hemoglobin in your red blood cells carries oxygen to all cells. Protein helps in the production of hormones, which are chemicals that regulate the activities of your body systems. They're not as effective as carbohydrates, but they can be used as energy, but once again, not as effective. It's recommended about 10%, 10 to 15% of total daily calories should come from protein. If you're an individual that's possibly looking to add more bulk or maybe more lean tissue, therefore you're going to be doing more work, more weightlifting, etc., it's probably okay to take that 10 to 15% and maybe bump it up as high as 20 to 25%, but certainly no higher than that. Your body only needs so much protein. Any protein that you take above and beyond what your body needs, your body has no other choice but to store it as fat. So it could be a waste of money and a waste of time for those people who are buying a lot of the muscle milks and protein bars and things like that. It's recommended that teen girls get approximately 46 grams of protein per day, and teen boys about 52 grams of protein per day. Fats. As you can see here, fats are a type of lipid. A lipid is a fatty substance that does not dissolve in water. Very much how oil and water does not mix, fat and water does not mix as well. So it's not going to dissolve in water. So that fatty substance is going to carry itself through your blood supply. Your body will use fat for energy. Your body will store some fat around vital organs. Your body will store some fat subcutaneously, which means directly below the layer of the skin to act as an insulator. And any fat that's eaten in excess or abundance, your body has no other choice but to store it as adipose tissue. So we want to be very careful that we don't take in too much fat. As you can see here, fat supply is 9 calories per gram, which basically means fat. When you're eating foods high in fat, the calories are going to add up almost 2.5 times faster than the calories you would consume from carbohydrates and from protein. Okay, high fat foods are high in calories. And at the end of the day, when it comes to you maintaining your overall weight, it does come down to caloric intake. How much do I consume? How much do I expend? So it's really important that we keep those things in perspective. It's recommended that less than 25 to 35% of your calories should come from fat. 25 to 35% is not your goal, but it's your ceiling. In the perfect world, we would want your fat intake probably to be somewhere between 15 to 20%. If it is 15 to 20%, that means you're probably getting adequate amounts of carbohydrates and probably getting adequate amounts of protein as well. All right, when we look at the different types of fats, the first one is known as unsaturated. Unsaturated fats, you eat those in moderate amounts, and they may also help to lower your risk of heart disease. Saturated fats, if you consume too many saturated fats, they may increase your risk of heart disease. And the last one that some of you have heard before is called trans fat. This can raise your total blood cholesterol level and will also increase your risk of heart disease. On the upcoming slides, we'll talk about each one of these types of fats in a little bit more detail. The first one is saturated. Saturated, it's a fatty acid that's holding all the hydrogen that it can hold. And because of that, these type of fats tend to be solid or semi-solid at room temp. No more than 10% of your total fat intake should come from a saturated source. It's not to say your total calories should be 10%. What it's saying is no more than 10% of your total fat should be saturated. So animal fats, tropical oils, this is the bad fat because it is a solid or semi-solid, which means when we consume this fat, some of it is stored as energy, some of it's going to be stored in and around the body, but some of it's going to actually plug up or clog against the walls of your arteries and veins, and it's a very sticky substance. And as these fats begin to build up in the walls of your arteries and veins, that's where the narrowing of the blood vessels could occur, and we could have heart attacks and things like that. All right, the next one is unsaturated. Unsaturated means it's missing hydrogen, and because it's missing hydrogen, it's now going to be a liquid when it sits at room temperature. This would be a better fat, and the reason why that is because it's not going to stick to the walls of the blood vessels, and this is not a contributing factor to heart disease. But please keep in mind it is still fat. The calories are still adding up, and if we're consuming too much of that fat, we can end up storing it as adipose tissue, and it could be a contributing factor to weight gain. Olive oil would be a great source of this, and it's liquid at room temp, and it does help to reduce the risk of heart disease. So if you have a choice between when you're cooking a meal of using saturated or unsaturated, we always want to make sure that we choose unsaturated fats. Trans fat, as you see here, guys, is a process called hydrogenation, which basically means is they take a liquid fat like a vegetable oil and they pump in extra hydrogen. So they, as it says, the process is called hydrogenation. And what you're doing is you're taking a liquid fat and you're converting it into a solid fat. And a lot of times companies have done this because it does help with taste and flavor. It does help with keeping certain foods fresh for longer periods of time, so it increases shelf life. In the long run, it's a cheaper way to make foods. Many of the foods, as you see here, stick margarine, snack foods, packaged baked goods, cookies, crackers, donuts, etc. These are typically the types of foods that are made with trans fat. The USDA now requires that all trans fat be listed on the nutrition label. This fat is considered the worst fat of all. It's worse than saturated because you pumped in the extra hydrogen. This fat is even more of a solid than what a saturated fat would normally be. Some health issues with fat. Your body needs a certain amount, but we don't want to overdo it. Consuming a lot of fats can lead to unhealthful weight gain, obesity, and to other health risks. What are some of the things that fat will do? It helps with brain development. It does help with the clotting of blood. It does help to control inflammation, maintain healthy skin and hair. In other roles, is it does help with energy. Fat will also hold some important vitamins such as A, D, E, and K. So if you do not eat enough of those important vitamins, your fat can store them and release them when you need them. Cholesterol is a fat-like substance. It's found in foods only of animal origin. Your body can make all that it needs. It is responsible for creating cell walls. It does help with hormones. It does help with vitamin D. Too much cholesterol can be a contributing factor to heart disease. There's the HDLs, which are your good cholesterol, the LDLs, which are your bad cholesterol. You really want to limit your intake of animal products, or at least make sure you're eating foods that are low in fat, because cholesterol, once again, is a contributing factor to heart disease. Vitamins. Vitamins are compounds that are found in food that help regulate many body processes. Vitamins in and of themselves do not supply energy. So there's no calories coming from vitamins, but they do carry out a lot of important functions. And what one person might find is they feel more energetic when they have enough vitamins, because now the body can function the way that it needs to. We have two types of vitamins. We have water soluble and fat soluble. Water soluble, which means they dissolve in water. Vitamin C, folic acid, your B complex vitamins are examples. Any water soluble vitamin that you take in excess, your body will increase urination and get rid of throughout the day, which means the very next day you need just as much as the day before. Fat soluble, anything you take in excess, your body will store. And those would be such as A, D, E, and K. So if you have a day where you don't eat enough of a fat soluble vitamin, your body can tap into its fat supplies and get what it needs. Minerals. Minerals act very much like vitamins. They're like catalysts. They help speed up a lot of chemical reactions. Minerals are elements that are found in food that are used by the body. Your body cannot manufacture any minerals, so you must get them all from food. Going back, your body can produce vitamin D with sunlight. So your body is capable of producing some vitamins, but cannot produce any minerals. Calcium would be an example of a mineral that you need in an abundance. It promotes bone health. It helps reduce osteoporosis, which is where bones become fragile and more likely for fractures. But once again, minerals do help regulate a lot of body processes. Water, which is the last of our 6 nutrients. Water is essential for just about every function that we participate in. Teen girls need about 9 cups of water per day, and teen boys need about 13. The more active you are, the more you need. So the numbers you're seeing here would be like an average. For those of you who might be more active than average, you can certainly consume more than what's recommended. Some of the functions of water: it helps to move food through your digestive system. It helps with digesting carbohydrates and protein. It helps aiding in a lot of chemical reactions, and it helps to transport nutrients, and it helps to move waste. Other functions is it helps to store and release heat. It helps cool the body through perspiration, cushions the eyes, brain, spinal cord, and it helps to lubricate the joints. Water is a very, very important nutrient. It regulates so many body processes. There are no calories in water, but water in and of itself does so many great things. It helps prevent dehydration. It allows the body to perform at a high level. It helps to keep the body cool. And as we've talked about, it acts as a regulator and helps with so many other functions as well. Some other tips: drink extra water before, during, and after you exercise. Don't wait till you're thirsty. Try to drink before, during, and after, so that way you don't get dehydrated. Drink extra fluids when the weather is hot to prevent dehydration. And limit your consumption of coffee, tea, and soft drinks, because these tend to dehydrate you rather than hydrate you.